David Marsland there. We're now joined by the co-leader of the Scottish Green Party, Patrick Harvie, the former SNP advisor, Ewan Crawford, and the political commentator and biographer of Alex Salmond, David Torrance. Patrick, you're going to be there tomorrow. What can we expect?
Well, what we can expect is really day one of a campaign. I don't think that we should expect all of the pieces to be in place yet. This is the beginning of something that's going to have to develop and going to have to reach out to many more people than just the folk who appeared in your film there. It certainly needs to go beyond party politicians if it's going to engage with people in a way that's meaningful. I think it needs to do that by actually debating some of the issues, some of the questions, some of the practical questions people will have that they'll want to know before they're willing to put an X in a box in 2014.
It's a very broad church, though. How comfortable are you joining forces with the SNP?
I wouldn't be comfortable joining forces with the SNP. I wouldn't put it that way. I'm very comfortable participating in the launch of a campaign and explaining why many Greens feel that a yes vote is part of what we need if we're going to see transformational politics. You know, our politics doesn't begin with national identity or with flags or with borders. It begins with the need for a transformational change in the way that we run our society and our economy and our politics. And most Greens feel that part of the context for achieving that is greater powers for Scotland and full independence. But I'm very comfortable as well being part of a political party that's not rigidly ideological and that does have a range of views within it.
Ewan, it's a big tent. How unified is this movement going to be?
Well, I think the SNP believes in a very simple idea, which they hope and I hope is compelling, and it's this, that the decisions about Scotland should be taken by the people who care most about Scotland, and that is the people who live here. Now, when you talk about the broad tent, it's the broadest of tents because the SNP believes that whatever the outcome of decisions about Scotland, that should primarily command the support of the majority. Now, at the moment, we have a government in Westminster that's taking decisions about Scotland that does not command majority support, indeed is disliked by people in Scotland. So, of course, it's going to be a broad tent, but it's going to be a broad tent that generally reflects the views of people in this country.
But will the trouble not happen when the SNP's vision of Scotland is different from the Green Party's vision of an independent Scotland, the SSP?
Well, of course there will be differences, but ultimately people who believe in independence believe strongly in this idea that people in Scotland should be taking the decisions. Now, of course, it's going to be difficult. Of course, it's going to be different from a general election campaign. But one thing I'm very clear on is it can't be a big SNP versus Labour campaign. I don't think that would be good for the SNP and it won't be good for the independence movement.
David, what do you think about the timing of the campaign? Is it the right time to launch it? The referendum's still 2.5 years away.
I think it probably is. Just on Ewan's point about people in Scotland being best to make decisions, last time I checked, the Governor of the Bank of England and indeed the Board of the Bank of England are not in Scotland. So I think that message is a bit muddled. On the timing, yes, I think they had to do something now. I don't think it would have been sustainable to put it off any longer. It is a long campaign. Maintaining that momentum for both the yes and no side is going to be extremely difficult. But the other message I think is a bit weak is this is a cross-party campaign. It's not just about the SNP. I don't think that's convincing. And most Scottish voters, I think, associate the SNP with independence and vice versa.
I mean, that's ultimately true, but the point about this is it shouldn't just be a cross-party campaign. It has to be, if it's going to succeed, and who knows if it will, there's going to be a non-party campaign. It generally does have to enthuse people. And if people can get excited about what Scotland could be, Scotland is, we like to think of as an equal society, it is not. We should try and get involved in that debate about how we can actually change it.
But I wanted to ask you, you're going to have to turn around public opinion. Consistently, opinion polls have said roughly a third of Scots are in favour of independence. How do you make that leap from 30 to 50? Something dramatic is going to happen.
Well, this is where I perhaps disagree with something else that Ewan said, that people who support the Yes campaign feel strongly about it. I think actually there's a lot of people who are going to take their time to make their mind up. I think there's a lot of people who haven't yet been strongly convinced either way.
But how are you going to convince them?
Well, if we're going to do that, it's going to have to get beyond the SNP because the SNP are not willing to spell out a clear vision of what they want. They seem to want independence to be all things to all people at the moment. And I think a clear and compelling vision of transformational politics in our society is the only thing that's going to convince people to change their mind. People who want the status quo will vote for the status quo. And if Alex Salmond thinks that he can turn independence into something where, don't worry, you keep the pound and you keep the Queen and nothing will be very different, I'm afraid I don't think I have a lot of confidence in that strategy. I think it's going to have to be much more clear, compelling and convincing if it's going to engage with people who are not SNP supporters or who are not yet convinced about independence.
Ewan, is the SNP, is the whole movement going to have to spell out more clearly what independence actually means?
Well, I think people genuinely are interested in this debate and are looking for questions to some of the practical answers. To an extent, I agree with Patrick that there does need to be a sense of mission, of why you're doing it, and you're trying to do it to create a more prosperous and a more equal country. Now, that does require a long debate, and there will be people who will disagree, people who will agree, but the idea of tomorrow, as I understand it, is to genuinely get people involved in a debate that's going to have a big impact on all our lives.
It's got to be the beginning of a process, absolutely.
David, when are we going to see the launch of the No campaign, and is Alistair Darling the right man to lead it?
I saw Alistair, I'm name dropping here, I saw Alistair Darling earlier on this evening in Edinburgh. I was chairing an event with him there. He's certainly going to be prominently involved. He confirmed that, and indeed recent press reports also alluded to that. Is he the right man for the job? I think that remains to be seen. I mean, one thing he does have is a sort of cool unflappability, which I think will come in very useful. He's not scared of Alex Salmond, a lot of people are. I think in debate and on the economics of the unionist case, he'll be very good. But I'm not sure what the public make of him, and indeed polling might be equivocal on that point. But over time, I imagine he'll establish himself. When will we see it? I think within a matter of weeks. I asked Alistair that earlier on, and he confirmed that it would be during June. I do now get the sense that the No campaign have got their act together. If you'd asked me that a month ago, I would have said no, absolutely not. They're underprepared. I think now they're ready to launch.
Thank you all very much indeed.